learning to play and talk at the same time, but I'm not always going to do both. They say the best stuff never gets recorded. If you get stuck, what do? Here's an idea. You go to the real book, or any music book. And the nice thing about the real book is that you can read it even without sight reading, if you know how to read chord charts, which was a lot easier for me when I was younger, and reading dots was really hard for me. It still is hard for me, but it's worth learning. I wish I would have gone to and committed to learning when I was younger, but it's been a lifelong process and a goal that's always obtainable, I think, for any age, and I want to promote that. So you can express what's really in your heart. Minor seventh. I think it's interesting how we cluster things in our minds. It's how part of the cognitive process of learning is that we tend to cluster thoughts and cluster ideas and visions. They become familiar to us. Of familiarity become accessible to you. I guess that's a good way of putting it. See that it's a 13th. It's got the 7 and the 6 in it. Has a depth that not a lot of other chords do. And there's the major 7th there. Leads into the dominant, into the root. musician or not, you have your soul music, and that, you know, could be anybody. For me, it was a lot of the mid-'70s, late '70s fusion guys like Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays, Keith Jarrett, and, you know, that whole crew. And thank my parents very much for introducing me to that music at a young age, because it's amazing music, and it's a school of music, really. It's more than just a style of music. It's a school of music. It's part of the true fusion era. It is the most, to me, in my opinion, the most beautiful stuff to come out of that fusion era. Flavor of new age and mainstream jazz. That's what made it real, rather than too floofy or too chaotic. Well, some of it's chaotic, but back to the dominant seventh. It's your blues seventh. The dominant seventh and the major seventh, each has their own unique relationship with other chords, particularly the minor seventh, the adjacent minor seventh from the major seventh. That's a very popular chord progression you'll hear, especially in Metheny's music. Hear that? That shares some of the notes between C major seventh and B minor seventh. So it goes from a major seventh to a dominant seventh, but the major seventh is the new root in the minor seventh, so it's a cool thing to remember. And anywhere you get on the keyboard, you can play one into the other. Part of the jazz language. That's part of the fusion jazz language. I think the fusion guys built on what the bebop guys and the later hard bop guys were doing. You know, of course, mixed, influenced by rock and roll, progressive rock. A school that never really has gotten its due, in my opinion. I think their musicianship is above and beyond any other forms. And they just, well, it's because it's more of an art music, I think. It's more of a classical music than it is a pop music. So I've been working on a song called Lakes by Pat Metheny. And it's a song that I actually just really sorry about the kids, but kids are part of some of their recordings. We love kids, right? Sometimes when you're just doodling around, you run into some off chord that you're not expecting, and the key in jazz, and well, in any music, transition from that momentary confusion or momentary doubt, cacophony, or something unexpected into something that is in tune. And by in tune, I'm saying whatever is in tune in your original intention on getting on the board to begin with. Here's the thing about popular music, it's usually just 2 or 3 chords in a song, whereas in a lot of classical, of course, but also in jazz, there's so much moving around the circle of fifths, but also in kind of the language of their progressions that it can confuse somebody coming from a popular music standpoint. The key to that is to really, well, practice, of course, but to also appreciate what each separate language in the music lexicon. Most avant-garde composers from classical era, from Ravel on, they knew that that was a rule that was meant to be broken. Ravel is the best example of that I can think of. Premonition of what was to come, with a lot of music into the 20th century and into today. Section, so I played it over, and that's okay. Play the section over. The way you learn the chord, you don't learn where you transition from. With Pat Metheny, he goes into some weird shit, some weird chord progressions that you gotta like go, oh, yeah, you gotta listen to the music. It's a D over A sharp. It has a unique place in the language of fusion jazz because it's going somewhere. It's a moment of weirdness, 70s weirdness. Yeah, where we're D over A sharp to B over C over B. So that's another one. But then he rounds it off and he comes into B flat over C, which is a more normal. Ah, yeah. Happy. It's the language of our brains that picks that up as being something we want to hear. It's an expectation, that resonance. To A7 over C sharp, which has a little more more blues feel to it. Because the dominant seventh, right? Into a happy D9, which is another of those fusion kind of new age. That's part of the new age influence of 70s fusion. 80s fusion too. 70s fusion. Happy to... It's okay to stick around at one or two chords if you don't understand them. That way you know, it's like focusing on a couple words in a language or a spelling of a word or whatever. Two, E minor 9. Piano's a little out of tune. It doesn't help, but you know what? I grew up playing out of tune of pianos in the mountains, and look where I turned out. That G flat major seventh, it's so airy because it's especially that key, because how the black and the white keys line up right there is really a unique phenomenon with the root B and F sharp and the G flat in this case. First learning a song, especially if you're not as familiar. I'm honestly not very familiar with this song listening-wise because this is from 1977. See, I'm not actually pretending to play this song per whatever album it was on. I'm playing the chords, and I know Pat Metheny enough to where I can play the chords kind of like Pat Metheny. And then I'll go and listen to the tune, and then I'll come back and maybe alter it or play it one way and then play it the intended way. That's the cool thing about music. You can do your own thing. There's nobody telling you you cannot, no matter what somebody in your life is telling you. Never believe that. That first pretty opening, D major, A over D, G over D, A over D. That's, you know, that bright, beautiful opening. And then there's this transition from D to A over C sharp to B minor. And that's where it starts to take on. This is the head, and this is where the song actually takes on that kind of more jazz feel rather than the bright and beautiful, you know, happy day, sound of music, whatever. It's the new age sound of music. It goes into more of a, of a jazz arrangement. Not a real strict mainstream jazz arrangement, but I'm talking more the chord structures and their relationship. There, it's over here where we get into more of the weird, like where are they going kind of stuff. The F sharp over G sharp. No, that's actually bent. That's a happy chord. The reason why is it's a 1 and a 9 together. Here, E7 sharp 9 over G sharp, E flat over A, D over A sharp. Yeah, that's where it got kind of weird, and you're all of a sudden you're hearing stuff that you're not expecting, and it's a little bit weird. And then the C over B, that's a half step. C, B and C are a half step apart. So a half step major chord over neighbor is going to sound a little weird, whereas flat over C is a whole step. And we hear that as a lot more harmonious, I guess is the word. A7 over C sharp, that has that blues feel. D9, we're back to the happy, and then D over E flat, that gets a little weird again. And then E minor 9 is kind of a moody, minor 9 is a moody chord, makes you feel, longing for distant valleys and memories of your life. F sharp major 7, sorry, F sharp minus 7, G major 7th. So then we're going to that, there's that unique sharp, it's not unique, it's just it has its uniqueness in this kind of jazz. It's F sharp minor 7th to G major 7th, and then we're back to A7 suspend 4th. There's a lot of suspended 4th in both the suspended 4th and the A7 and the dominant 7 suspended 4th. And they're unique chords. They're related, but they're very unique chords. One is not the other. Just like the D is not the D major 7th, it's not the D dominant 7th. The B minor is not the B minor 7th. The B flat. No, what am I trying to say? B flat, altered, no, not altered 7, it's the, I'm sorry, deranged 7th. You know what I'm trying to say. Okay. So that's a look at the music. It's in the Real Book, Volume 2, page 231. It's meant to be played 180, kind of fast. Sometimes when I start playing this song, I do go off and do my own thing. A lot of times that is playing around with the kinds of progressions and the kinds of chords that I'm seeing in this song. And that is another good practice to do. That's something my uncle taught me. And the A over the D. And the G over the D. And those are all related, 1 to 5. It's not in this, but I threw in an F earlier. F over D. throws you off because you go into the D9, and you go from this moody minor to back to happy. And Pat does that a lot. He pulls the rug from under you sometimes like that, and I think Lyle does that too. They do it both. But you know, I was just thinking, I was playing. If you noticed, I started to play on the higher register, and the good thing about the higher register is that usually it's a little clearer, especially on an old beat-up piano like this, which I'm. Back to that D9. It goes kind of bright coming out of that B minor. And I'd hit the E on the root before, that's why I stopped. The 9 and the root are close together, but they're not the same. It's like the 7 and the 8, 7 and the 1. They're close together too, but they're not the same. Hear that difference? You know, when I'm trying to learn a chord too, or a chord progression that's a little new or unusual, I sometimes play it up and down the keyboard, and play in different positions, and really listen for that feel and that sound. And if you arpeggiate, you play all the notes instead of just making a flat chord like that. And you start to appreciate what is making up that chord, what makes it unique. In this case, it was G major 7th. Going down to that F sharp minor 7th. It's that new age kind of. Down to that F major 7th. Notice there, I started to play the C. This is in the E flat, E minor, 9th. And I played a C like that. That sounded a little weird, so I realized, hey, wait a minute, that's not in the key of, in this instance, E minor 9th, but C sharp. That is. And I started playing that, and it sounded a little gamelan, kind of a little more Asian. It's not the do re mi scale; it's a different scale, and that's the cool thing about modern music, especially. But I think it's come from like I've been talking about the '70s fusion era being opening doorway to the world. And world music itself being so much exponentially more popular since the 80s, large part due to Peter Gabriel and to, Mickey Hart, but also to a lot of those fusion cats, because, man, they were all over the world. They were. Weather Report, Ayrton Moreira, Jaco Pastorius, well, he was American, but he was a genius. But anyway, Alex Cunha,